Sairam. I offer my humble pranams at Swami's lotus feet. So today I'd like to share how my family came into Swami's fold and some of the experiences I have had. It was in the mid 1970s when my grandfather was in the railways. So they used to get the railway passes to travel. So one of their expeditions they were in the south and in Bangalore. So through somebody they got to meet Swami, and my mother tells that that's when their whole life changed and Swami became the center of everything they did. And from that year onwards, visits to Prashantinilayam and Vrindavan became more frequent, and everything God for them became Swami. So similarly for us, when I was born, and later on for me, God was Swami was synonymous with God. My first memory, which I still recollect, is from Brindavan. Must be 99 or 2000. So I remember Swami walking up to us and seeing him in his beautiful orange robe. So I don't remember anything else from that trip, but my mother tells us that Swami came close to us and my brother was there. So Swami patted his cheek, blessed him, and that was my first memory. So on many of our trips to Prashantinilayam, I used to generally go with my grandfather, and so our trips used to be primarily like spiritual trips where we would go to Parthi and then we would go to other places also, or go to other places and then go to Parthi. So on one such visit, we had gone for Shivratri, and while returning, we went to Madhya Pradesh and we were in Ujjain. So my grandmother had this habit of, she had a very small photo of Swami, and where in whichever temple we would go and we would be praying, so she would place that Swami's photo as well. So sometimes I used to ask her, "Okay, why do you place it?" and all. So she never used to reply to that question. So during that visit, we were in Ujjain praying. There was a Shiva temple there, so praying there, and so she kept that photo of Swami, and while we were playing, after we finished offering our gratitude to God, we looked at that picture, and there was a shivling of sorts made there of vibhuti, and it was coming out profusely from that photograph. That was one experience. So some few more experiences where we saw Swami from close were when he had come to Delhi in 2010. So after my grandfather retired from the railways, he moved to the US. And generally, he used to come around Swami's birthday time when he would be going, and the weather here as well was good that time. But that year, Swami had come to Delhi in April, so he planned his trip around that time. So my grandfather used to generally like ask kids in our household, "Okay, try you should plan yourself such that you go and study in his college." But none of my brothers paid heed to that. So one day, I guess it was first or second day of Swami's visit here, we were at the Sai International Center, and we were sitting next to Swami's pathway. Swami came to us. He stopped where my grandfather was sitting at the edge. So he stopped where my grandfather was. My grandfather got up on his knees, and he had brought in a few letters from his friends. So he gave those to Swami, and they shared a few words, I guess. Then once he sat down, he looked towards me, and then he was like, "Next year you're going and studying in his college." So I was in class 12 then. So again, I also didn't pay much heed to that. So on that same trip, uh, uh, we like so even that day, like when Swami spoke to my grandfather, we were sitting next to him, but we couldn't get the chance to interact with him. So there was that feeling, okay, we also didn't get that. Me and my brother were sitting, so we didn't get that chance. On the same trip, like I guess it was the last day of Swami's stay in Delhi. He had returned from Shimla, and then it was his last day in Delhi. So I and my brother were sitting. Luckily, we got front next to his pathway. We were sitting on that alley, and while Swami was going, uh, So Swami approached us, like we were sitting there for like 2 3 hours there and just waiting for Swami, praying profusely, like Swami, please do come this side, and this would be potentially the last chance we see you this trip. So Swami came towards us, but as he was approaching, he started looking at the other side. So I just called out like Swami, like literally shouted, okay, Swami, and then Swami looked at us. So he smiled at us. I and my brother took Pad Namaskar. He blessed us, and then he went by. So his car was waiting to take him to the airport. Everybody there was crying. I and my brother were the only ones there in a joyous, happy mood because we had been waiting for that moment the entire trip, and that was our spotlight time to enjoy. And I guess that was the last time I saw him in person. And a few days after Swami left from Delhi on that 2010 trip, my parents were visiting, along with my grandparents, were visiting Himachal Pradesh, and my grandfather started feeling uneasy, and he had certain pain in his chest. So they took him to the hospital, and then the situation became pretty grim. Like, so as soon as they put him on a stretcher there and placed him in the room, there was a Swami's photo there on the top. And so my grandfather always used to carry a packet of vibhuti in his wallet. He asked for it, and my mother put in some vibhuti in his mouth, and that's when he breathed his last. So it was almost like 2 3 weeks after he had that interaction with Swami, and he passed away. And to us, Swami gave that sort of a reassurance that he's the one taking care. So who would, in a way, imagine that when you go off to such a far flung place, have to go to a hospital and imagine that Swami's photo is there on the wall. And then a year passed. I also got on with my studies and started planning my future. I had a few plans, but around April, March time, whenever the forms had to be filled, my mother was like, "Why don't you just apply and then we'll see how it goes." So I applied, and I and my mother went. I finished the entrance exam interview process as well, and we came back to Delhi. And I started preparing for the other entrance exams I was planning to give. So generally, what happens is that in the northern part of India, the exam results come in, say, end of May. At least that's what used to happen when I was studying. End of May sort, and colleges would begin, say, July or August. But down south, as well as in Swami's Institute, session starts 1st of June. So you have to make that call. Either you go there and study, or you want to wait and figure out what your future would be here. But given all these entrance exams, I was waiting for my um, for the results to decide. And there was this thought, like grandfather had told like a year back, you would go and study there. So that thought was there at the back of the mind. So I thought, okay, let's go and see if I'm able to adjust and stay there. Uh, I will continue. Otherwise, if something else figures out in some other college, I would come. So a precursor to that would be like once before my parents had tried to send me to a Swami school in Rishikesh. So I and my brother had gone. So my brother is a year younger to me. So he ended up staying there for 2 years. I ran and came back after 2 days. So that was the precursor. So like adjusting to a new place for me always has been a big issue. So I went there, and my parents. So still, that thought was there. Initially, for me, few months were very difficult. So when my parents had gone to drop me there, so there was a big fire in our house. The first floor was totally gone. So, and we stay on the floor above. So, and luckily, both my parents were with me in Brindavan. God knows what had happened if they were here. Would have found hard to even escape and go down. So I took that as an indication. Okay, this is the right place. You have to study and stay here. And over time, I started liking the place and got adjusted to it. Though initially a few months were difficult, but my friends there, the teachers there helped me a lot. So there were a few instances which happened with me in Brindavan. which I still cherish and love. And so sweet memories. So one day I was, if any of you would have gone to Brindavan, so from the college to the hostel, there's a cricket ground and there's a walkway next to that. So I was coming back after college. I generally used to go to the library, read something, and then come back a bit later. So I was walking by, and suddenly, like some way, it stuck in my mind. Ke I started feeling like craving chole bhature for some odd reason. And then like how do you crib to your mother ke kya mummy? So that's what I used to talk to Swami like that. So I was like kya Swami kahan aa gaya मैं कुछ ये भी खाने भी नहीं सकता and all that. So I also forgot about it. Went to hostel, dressed up, went for bhajans, came back, then went for dinner, and for all you know, the menu was chole bhature that day. So I stayed there for 3 years, and I guess that was the only or one more time we had chole bhature on the menu anytime. Similar, same like first year of my stay in Vrindavan. I was average in my studies when I was in Delhi. When I went there with the support of teachers and my friends there, I picked up pace and started doing well in studies. So during one of these exams, like after generally when you come out of an exam, you feel like comparing and sharing notes. So I was sharing notes with my friend and just figured out that I had done one question wrong. And so rarely in my life have scored like a 10% on any exam. So I felt that was my opportunity when I was writing that exam. It was going very well. So after I came out, I was feeling dejected after knowing that I had done one question wrong. So it was a mid-semester exam. So I guess a few days or a week later, we got our answer scripts, and I was going through. So the shock previously was that when I got my answer script, I had got 10% in that exam. Like how is that possible? So I just flipped to that page and I was looking at that question. So what I had written was it was cut and a correct solution was written next to it. So again, I was like thanking Swami profusely, like you did that for me. So for once, I have that 10% record in any of the exams. So from there, I moved to Parthi. And in Parthi again, like so many instances happened, which again made sure that. So one, so my mother was there once in Parthi, and my grandmother was traveling to London for a vacation. So what happened there was that she met with an accident, and it was a really bad accident. A car stuck her, and she was dragged a few hundred feet. There were big question marks whether she would be able to walk again or not. So again, I knew at that point in time itself that my mother was a similar sort of an incident has happened before when my parents were in Vrindavan and they were safe, the house was safe. And I knew that because she's here and I'm here, we'll pray to Swami and Swami will take care of everything. And my grandmother was fine in a few months. She walks now. It has been 7, 8 years since then, and she's been perfect since then. One such time, I was, I guess, in my second year of MBA, and I contracted chickenpox, and I was put in isolation there. So again, like similar, you get all the bland food, and you don't know who will come and see you when, like, my friend, one of my friends used to visit me 3 times a day only to bring me meals. So again, I was cribbing again to Swami. Swami, मम्मी होती तो ख्याल रखती and अभी कहाँ आ गया मैं ऐसे इतना बुरा लग रहा है मैं बोर हो रहा हूँ इधर and the next meal the director walks in. So the director used to stay out with his family, not in the hostel. So the director walks in and he brings my favorite food that day. So again, I was thanking Swami profusely, like, Swami, thank you so much. A precursor to that would be like one day I was walking in the campus and the director passed by and he just randomly asked me like, Daksh, whenever you go home, what do you ask your mother to cook? And I'm a big dal fan, so I told him that I like this dal a lot. So he brought that dal that day when I was in isolation. So when I was in Prashant Nilayam, I was part of the self-reliance department where we used to cook for sick patients. So I picked up a bit of cooking skills then. And after I passed out, I applied for jobs. So the job I had applied initially, the role which I had initially applied was in the south. So I was hoping that I would get that. But then when the results came out, I was placed in Tripura in the northeast, next to Bangladesh border. So again, that similar sort of thing started, that when you move into a new place, you would look for familiar people there whom you could connect, who would help you settle down. So I started asking friends and family if they knew anybody there. So nobody knew anyone there. I asked people if there was a Samiti there who could help me. I could not find any contact. So one of my friends who was in Kerala that time mentioned that he knows somebody who is in Tripura. So he gave me his number and I called him up, a senior alumni, and he mentioned to me that I told him that I would be going on this day to Tripura. Again, like similar sort of rant to Swami. Swami, कहाँ बेच दिया? अभी इतना दूर जाके कैसे रहूँगा? कोई मिल भी नहीं रहा है. So, and then I called up that senior alumni. He's like, I was in Tripura 2 years back. Now I've moved back to Hyderabad. But he gave me a few contacts whom I could reach out. And I just mentioned to him that I would be taking this flight going on this day. That was the conversation. That's it. The day I land in Tripura, and I'm climbing down the steps of the aircraft, and there are two people standing there, and they're asking everyone, "Are you Daksh? Are you Daksh? Are you Daksh?" So it seems the alumni there was the head of the airport authority in Tripura, and he had instructed the people there to receive me when I reached there. So they took me around the city, helped me find a house, ensured that I was in a comfortable place. So these little things that Swami did all through my life and has been doing till now have ensured that I have been taken care of. And goes on to show that how much he loves us, giving us all these sweet memories, sweet instances, just to reminisce his presence, his love. So that's all I had to share with all of you today, and I really thank you for the opportunity. And bye.